Welcome to our JavaScript web course. In this video, we will begin learning how to write JavaScript code in the HTML document. I have my Visual Studio Code Editor open, and I have opened a folder. The folder contains several demo files that I will show you. First, I would like to point out that Visual Studio Code does not have the ability to launch the file in the browser in order to preview it. You can install an extension that will preview it inside the editor. However, I prefer always opening my file in the browser so that you can actually see your code and the output. And also the browser has very useful debugging tools which we will learn how to use throughout this course. So here we see our structurally correct HTML5 document. We will learn how to write JavaScript code by displaying Hello World on the web page in several different locations using several different approaches. As you can see, I have my opening and closing script tag in the head section. Here I have a document.write, and in parentheses, I have the expression Hello World. The JavaScript language consists of objects, properties, and methods that are part of the language itself and also part of the document. The document object, which essentially refers to the web page, has a write method. Methods are always followed by parentheses. We will be learning more about the JavaScript syntax as we go through this course. But for now, this is how we will learn how to write content on the web page. If I pass this method an expression, which will be text content on the web page, it needs to be enclosed in either single or double quotes. JavaScript statements are always terminated by a semicolon. Technically, content that is displayed on the web page does not belong in the head section. I am doing this for a demonstration only. So here we have a document.write statement in the head section. I also have a document.write statement in the body. Notice it is enclosed in the script tags. Notice it is placed inside a P element, which is placed inside a section element, which is inside the body element. When I preview the result in the web page, I see my first Hello World on top of my H1 element, and I see my second Hello World underneath it. A good way to see the output of your JavaScript code is to use the browser's Inspect tool. If I right-click and choose Inspect, I can see my document structure here. If I use the arrows to open the content, notice here is my script tag that is in the head section. However, you see the Hello World is actually being rendered in the body. Now when I expand my section element, which also contains another script tag, there you see the script tag, you can see the document, you can see the code there, but you also see the output there inside the paragraph tag. This is one way of verifying that your generated JavaScript is displaying properly. When we use the Inspect tool, to the right of the inspector is the console. We will be learning how to use the console to find errors in the future. I am back in my Visual Studio Code Editor and I am looking at another file. Now I have some CSS code in my head section. I have defined a class called Red. Although that class is not being used with my JavaScript, it is being used with the HTML, and I am just pointing that out here. Notice that I have two script tags sitting right on top of each other. They each contain a document.write statement. One says Hello World 2, one says Hello World 3. The point I want to make here is that this script element is an inline element. An inline element means that there is no carriage return before or after the element, and they run together in the web page, such as a B element or an EM element. The opposite of an inline element would be a block element, such as a paragraph or a section, where there is a separation on the top and bottom between that element and the next element. When you look at the preview in the web page, you will see that Hello World 2 and Hello World 3 are sitting right next to each other. Again, the point is that the script element is an inline HTML element. I am in my Visual Studio Code editor, and I am now looking at another file. This file also uses the CSS class called red, but now it is being used in the JavaScript code. If you look in my script tag, I have two document.write statements inside the one script tag. I also have a script tag on top of it with one document.write statement. Notice in the first script tag that I have some HTML inside the parentheses here. This HTML will be interpreted as HTML normally is, and it will cause a line break after this document.write. Now, if you look in the second script block, in the first document.write statement, not only do I have some HTML, but I have added the class attribute with the value of red for my CSS class. When using document.write, when you display a text literal that contains text and or HTML, the literal expression needs to be enclosed in quotations. They can be double quotes or single quotes. However, if you put quotations inside those quotations, you need to alternate them. For example, double quotes on the outside, single quotes on the inside, or vice versa. However, you can also use what is called an escape character, which is covered later in this book, so that you can use double quotations on the outside and in the inside. This would only be used if you want those inside quotations to be displayed as text characters in your HTML markup. Now, if you look at my web page, you see my three document.write statements are all stacked up one on top of each other. And you can see the one in the middle is not only bold, but it is red. All that was accomplished using JavaScript. If you right-click and use the Browser's Inspect tool, you will see that here we have our Hello World 2, and we have the HTML BR element right underneath it. Further down, you can see the HTML and CSS. Here we have class equals double quote red and double quote. We also have our opening and closing B tags and our BR element. So all that was generated using JavaScript, and again, using the Inspect tool, you can actually see how the code you write translates into HTML. You always want to do this to make sure you are generating syntactically correct HTML syntax. I am back in my Visual Studio Code editor, and I am looking at the same file that we previously looked at, with the exception that I have added some more HTML code and an external JavaScript file. Notice I have added a footer section. Inside the footer, there is a paragraph element. Inside that paragraph element, there is an external JavaScript file. Notice I have an opening and closing script tag, and the opening script tag has the source attribute. The value of the source attribute is the name of the JavaScript file. Notice that an external JavaScript has a .js extension. This is very similar to an external CSS file and created in a similar manner with a blank document saved with that characteristic extension. Now I am looking at the external file, and in it I have one comment and one document.write statement, which merely says this is the copyright. That document.write statement will appear exactly in the place where that external JavaScript script tag resides. So again, wherever the script tag is placed, that is where the JavaScript code will be, and in this case it will be inside this paragraph element that is inside the footer. If this file were in a folder, you would need to add a path to the value for the source attribute. Notice that you do not need type equals text/JavaScript. You will see it on the web. You may see it in books. It is not required in HTML5. Now I am looking at the output of my JavaScript code in the HTML document in the browser. Notice I have my Hello World 2, Hello World 3, and the end, as we saw previously. Now we also see a statement, this is the copyright. Again, the only way to verify that it is being executed correctly is for me to right-click and go to my Inspect tool. You never just assume that just because it looks okay in the browser that it is okay. You'll always want to verify with the Inspect tool, and that applies to your HTML and CSS code also. So here we see that our statement, this is the copyright, is indeed sitting inside the paragraph, which is inside the footer, which was added to our document here. Should I look at the source code in the browser, I can right-click and view the page source, and here I see exactly what I saw in my editor. However, I can click on this external file, and it will open it up in the browser, similar to clicking on the file name of an external CSS file. So here I can actually see that external file. However, when I use my Inspect tool, I can see the result of that external file exactly where it should be inside my HTML document. So for the first couple weeks, we will be using document.write to learn about some JavaScript principles, and eventually we will be learning a more industry standard method using the document object model. Document.write dates back to the early days of the web. It is not used in the industry today. However, it is useful for learning the language.